When you hear the word romantic, you probably think of hearts and flowers, right? Well, we're about to dive into a totally different kind of romanticism. This was a full-blown revolution in art, music, and thinking that completely flipped how people saw the world and themselves. It was a seismic shift away from the head and straight into the heart.
So on one hand, you have this world of neoclassicism. It's all orderly, rational, perfectly balanced, kind of like a math equation that's been solved. And on the other hand, you have romanticism. It's emotional, it's wild, and it's all about the individuals standing against this huge, powerful natural world. So the big question is, how on earth did European culture make such a dramatic leap from one to the other? What happened?
To really get a rebellion, you first have to understand the world it was rebelling against. So let's start there. Let's look at the era that came right before the storm, the very orderly, very structured Age of Reason. Okay, so the top dog style back then was something called neoclassicism. You can think of it as the official art of the Enlightenment. It was all about logic and structure, taking its cues from the ancient Greeks and Romans. The idea was that art wasn't supposed to be messy or emotional. No, it was supposed to be clear, balanced, and appeal to your intellect.
And this painting, it is the perfect example. Jacques-Louis David's Oath of the Hirashi is neoclassicism in a nutshell. I mean, just look at it. You've got the rigid, almost statue-like poses of the men. The whole scene is perfectly symmetrical, carefully balanced. Even the background with those arches is incredibly structured. The message is crystal clear and totally logical. Duty to your country comes before everything else. It's an argument aimed at your brain, not your feelings.
But a world built completely on reason started to feel a little cold, a little sterile, and you started to see these cracks appear as new thinkers and huge historical events sparked this powerful hunger for something more, something a little more human. A huge figure lighting that spark was the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And this one idea, man is born free and everywhere he is in chains, it sent absolute shockwaves across Europe. It was a direct challenge to the entire system, shifting the whole conversation towards individual freedom and away from the structures of society. And you can see just how much of a game changer this was. The mainstream Enlightenment view was follow your head. Reason can solve everything. But Rousseau comes along and says, hold on, reason can actually make us cold and uncaring. You should follow your heart. He championed the purity of nature over the stuffiness of city life. This was a totally new and frankly pretty radical way of thinking. And then, boom, the French Revolution. It kicked off with so much hope, with these incredible ideals of liberty and equality. But then it just spiraled into the nightmare of the Reign of Terror, and after that, the dictatorship of Napoleon. So the political revolution, it pretty much failed. But all of that explosive energy, that hunger for freedom, it didn't just vanish. Since it couldn't change politics, artists turned inward. They channeled all that passion into a new revolution, one in poetry, painting, and music. And this new spirit really found its voice first in poetry. To get a feel for it, we're going to look at two of the biggest poets of the time who kind of represent two totally different sides of this new emotional world. William Wordsworth basically threw out the old rulebook with this one idea. I mean, before him, writing poetry was all about following these super strict classical forms and rules. But Wordsworth comes along and says, no, real poetry should just burst out of you. It's about genuine individual emotion. It's not about being clever. It's about being real. And then you had Lord Byron. This guy didn't just write rebellious poetry, he lived it. And he gave us this whole new kind of character, the Byronic hero. You know the type, this brooding, moody, solitary figure who rejects all of society's rules. He was the ultimate anti-hero for the age. And let's be honest, this hero is pretty much just Byron writing about himself. This really captures the two poles of romanticism perfectly. So on one side, you've got Wordsworth living this quiet, thoughtful life out in the English countryside, finding something divine in the beauty of nature. And on the other side, you've got Byron, the world-traveling rebel, always looking for adventure, and just channeling this intense, defiant passion. Together, they give you the whole spectrum of what this movement was all about. All right, so now let's see how this exact same spirit just exploded onto the canvas. All those ideas that got the poet so fired up, the incredible power of nature, the intensity of human feeling, they found this breathtaking new life in painting. You can almost map the poets directly onto these painters. John Constable, He's the Wordsworth of painting. He captures that familiar, peaceful beauty of the English countryside. Then you have Eugene Delacroix, who is total Byron, all dramatic, revolutionary, passionate scenes. And right in the middle, you've got Caspar David Friedrich. He painted nature too, but for him, it wasn't peaceful. It was this mysterious, sublime, almost terrifyingly powerful force. And this quote from Friedrich, this is it. This is the absolute heart of the matter. This is the mission statement for Romanticism. Art is no longer just about copying the outside world accurately. No, it's about expressing an inner world, an emotional reality. You're not just painting a landscape, you're painting a soulscape. And here is all that passion made visible. Delacroix's Liberty Leading the People is the ultimate romantic political poster. It is not a calm, orderly painting of a battle. It's chaotic, it's emotional, it's powerful. It's got people from all walks of life, all classes, united in this one desperate, passionate struggle for freedom. Okay, now for the grand finale. Because if Romanticism had a soundtrack, it was without a doubt composed by one man. A man who stood like a giant, with one foot in that old world of classical order and the other planted firmly in the new world of romantic emotion. Ludwig van Beethoven. So before Beethoven, music was a lot like neoclassical art. It was all about elegance, balance, order, clarity. Think of Haydn and Mozart. But Beethoven, he came along and just shattered those rules. His music was way longer, far more complex, and it was just raw with a kind of personal emotion that audiences had never, ever heard before. It was shocking. Seriously, some critics at the time just complained that it was much too noisy. The story of the first performance of his Ninth Symphony is just the ultimate romantic legend. Okay, so picture this. The year is 1824. Beethoven, who is now completely deaf, gets on stage to conduct. The music finishes, and the entire hall just erupts. But he hears nothing. He's still facing the orchestra, completely unaware. It's not until one of the singers has to gently turn him around that he finally sees the thunderous volcanic ovation that he couldn't hear. I mean, what a story of individual genius triumphing over unbelievable struggle. And this is why he did it. For Beethoven, and really for all the Romantics, making art wasn't just a job or a choice. It was a necessity. It was this urgent, undeniable need to get the powerful feelings from inside out into the world. This quote right here could be the motto for the entire movement. So when we boil it all down, what's really at the heart of Romanticism? It's really these four big ideas. First, putting emotion over reason, saying that feeling, not logic, is the true path to understanding. Second, the incredible power of nature as a source of spiritual inspiration and awe. Third, this idea of the individual genius, the artist as this unique visionary who has to break the rules. And finally, running through it all, this powerful spirit of freedom, in art, in politics, and in your own life. Which kind of leaves us with a big question for our own time, doesn't it? In our world, which is so often guided by data, by logic, by algorithms, is there still room for that romantic spirit? Have we lost the value of that spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings? It's something to think about.